Yeah, so,
over.
So Texas, check the Jumbotron. I posted a little infographic. It's about how COVID is Jewish. What they're trying to do is they're trying to attack the mental state of these prisoners, essentially.
Let me finish.
I'm sorry, and I'm just going to tell you guys, everybody's being railroaded. I've worked for criminal attorneys, and everybody's being railroaded. But go ahead.
Yeah, so he does that, and he ends up being there for 90 days. 90 days.
Wow.
It's insane. And there are a lot of stories, and then, of course, they told me the same thing. You know, so you're up against the wall. Do you take the vaccination or do? And then I got in there and I found out it's true. You don't go in 2 weeks. You're in there till you leave. And then some of these prisons are just not set up with the right staff to let them out enough. You know, they put them in the worst prisons they can imagine. So I'm not one to advocate and say, oh, they're treating just J6ers bad and not everybody else. I don't do that kind of thing. However, they are. That's a fact.
So
Because
they are putting the J6ers in solitary confinement.
in some of these prisons, yes. And it's not, and I
Do
thought
they know, do they understand that that's illegal?
you know what the lady told me when I wanted to complain, you have your human rights and you can file a complaint. She wouldn't even give me the paperwork. She says, Miss Hippill, you're in prison. Do I need to say that again? And so I wouldn't able
And
to
did
file.
she not tell you you could file a complaint?
Well, in fact, well, it was the inmates that said I have to go to this person and she'll give me the paperwork.
There's something called bumness. I'm trying to
Look it doesn't exist for J6ers. Listen to me. This
What?
this is a reality. And people are going, oh, you're just trying to play victim and make it look like the J6ers are being picked on. No, I was there. I saw, in fact, the lady that's the lifer where I was at.
agree with you. I don't mean to interrupt you.
Miss Hemphill, you're not leaving prison. Do you get that? And I said, what are you talking about? You're a J6er. They're going to make sure you never get out of here. And I said, you're kidding me. How would they keep me? She said, they're going to put drugs in your room or in your drink when you're not looking. They will give you another charge. You'll be here for 4 to 7 years. Then they'll find something else and keep you another 5. This is real. This is really going on in these prisons with these J6ers. It's true. I wouldn't say this unless I had some facts.
Oh, you wouldn't? That's good to know.
However, is it cool if I answer that really quick for Texas? Or
Actually, I was going to ask Jaleese to speak. While she's got her hand.
Hello, Helena. It's actually Mark right now. I'm sitting next to Jaleese. Yeah, the Texas feeling, the rules don't matter anymore. The facts are made up. The laws don't apply. They're doing whatever they want to do to persecute us.
The rules never mattered in the system.
Well, true. Very true. And, you know, for you, Texas, I'm from North Texas also. Former candidate for state rep, while being a J6er, by the way. And yeah, it's absolutely nuts what's going on.
So you know what I'm talking about when it comes to Texas and their system for the jails and the prisons and everything.
Absolutely. And
Okay, thank you.
We've got some things going on with some of the higher ups in the state.
I don't trust them.
Now. Well, I don't either, but there's one that's why I ran for state rep, is because our rep is a big time rhino. I do know there's some of the J6ers that are working behind the scenes with some higher ups in the state government. There are things the state government can do, all states can do, to stop this, but they've got to get the balls. That's the problem.
Exactly, but do you really think they're going to do that? They're in.
You know the climate in Texas.
Okay, I think we should be able to go ahead and get started with the recording with this guy. So what we're going to do is we are going to, let's see. What we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and give him a call, and the audio won't be perfect, but that's okay. We are still learning how to do it. Okay. Someone from Mexico is calling you?
New Mexico.
From New Mexico?
Hello, this is American House of Cheese. Are you a furry foe?
Oh, this is the interview guy, my dear.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I get a lot of weird calls all the time. Can't be too careful.
Alright. Here, let me put you on speaker so we can hear you, and make sure that you are coming through loud and clear, my friend.
Roger that.
Alright, sounds good. So, what I will do is I'll just intro the show. I've got the let's see. I've got the Twitter page up here where we've got the Twitter space showing what's happening there. But of course, I've got that muted for the moment. And then what we wanted to do with you is to just ask you questions about your experience. Keep in mind that a lot of the people that are going to listen to the show are not going to have nearly as much knowledge as you about what happened. So we're going to need to make sure to speak to a general audience that doesn't know what happened.
Yeah.
So, imagine you're speaking to, the, just general news public and not, people that are spending multiple hours a day in calls talking about this.
Yeah. Roger that.
Okay, sounds good. So my understanding, based on what you said, is that the video that you have linked on your pinned post is video that you took while you were there. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, got it. So then what we will do is I've just got that up on the screen as the background of the video. So essentially that's just it's just going to be playing on loop on the video for the YouTube stream. And then
Okay. Well, if you want, I can get set up for video. I just wasn't prepared for it.
oh no, you're fine. No big deal.
Okay. All right.
Most of our audience is on the radio anyway, so it's no big deal.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. Cool.
So then what we will do is, excuse me. What we will do then is I will go ahead and start the recording, and we will go from there. Like I said, just make sure that you're talking to a general audience and not the January 6th crowd audience.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Because
I've been all around it, so
I'm
yeah,
sure.
I'm with you.
I'm
And
sure.
by the way, just ask whatever you want. You can kind of guide that conversation, obviously. I'm sure. So.
Okay, sounds good. All right, we will go ahead and go live in just a moment. Okay, and in 3, 2, 1. Hello, let's see, 5, 4, oh, it has to restart. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Furry President Show. Here with us today, we have a special guest named Sean Bradley Weitzman. Sean Bradley is one of the people who was present at the January 6th riots that happened in January of 2021. And we just wanted to bring Mr. Weitzman on the program and ask him a couple of questions about what happened that day. So go ahead and introduce yourself, my friend.
Yeah, Sean Weitzman. I've been, I started out as an independent journalist in 2019, actually with the idea of covering issues in Eastern Europe, of all places, and elsewhere on the globe. So that actually started with a trip to Armenia. I think I did a lot of good work towards that end, and I was excited about the future. Actually ended up taking another trip to the United Kingdom, traveled over to the United Kingdom, and worked more towards these kind of satirical documentaries. There's a lot of backstory here if we want to get into it, but that was really my start was in satire. It moved into kind of more realistic journalism. I started a podcast that was called the Armenian Council for Truth in Journalism in 2020, around March, and we did that nightly.
Wow.
Ended up covering a lot of the different BLM, kind of associated protests and riots throughout the summer of 2020. So I was kind of deeply involved in a lot of that, covering that from more of a left-leaning perspective. And then in November, obviously, we all saw issues with the election. Whatever people may or may not think about that, there was issues. And so I ended up going to Washington, D.C. in November to cover the original Million MAGA March. And so that's what I did. I ended up following, just like the Stop the Steal protests or whatever all around the country. I was in Atlanta, I was in Phoenix, and actually D.C. 3 times. And January 6th was the culmination of that coverage.
Got it. Okay, so you were on the ground covering it for your media outlet, website, YouTube channel. What you got?
Yep. I had a variety of different outlets that were all housed under my media company. So there were all sorts of things that were under that. And like I say, the nightly podcast was Armenian Council for Truth in Journalism, but that's since been deleted by YouTube because in the aftermath of the Department of Justice charging me for being there, they deleted all of that record.
Got it. Okay. Do you have some type of archive of that, or is it just completely gone?
Well, I've got it archived in a few different places. Obviously Odyssey has a lot of different material archived there because there was like a straight upload from YouTube to Odyssey at that time. That was one of the ways we tried to deal with different censorship issues that were going on. Because the censorship just was rampant, and that was all throughout the summer. It didn't matter if we were covering BLM protests or MAGA protests. There was just rampant censorship going on. And now we know, based off of filings that have come out in Missouri and everything else, that there was a lot of, I guess we could say, collusion at the very least between different government agencies and, Facebook, Meta, Twitter, and all of that. So I think as this entire investigation of what went on continues to move forward, we're going to be able to dig into that and find out a lot more of just how involved the government was in censorship on these various social media platforms.
Okay, interesting. So before we get into what happened that day, tell me about what drew you into journalism. Like I have my own story of just I love investigating things that are, complex, interesting issues, and trying to bring justice to those difficult situations. And so, what is that journey been like for you?
I think that's why people get into it. If I kind of wind back the clock a long way, I can actually go back to when I was a child, and I always had an interest in journalism. And then when I started going to college, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I was studying sociology, anthropology, philosophy, just kind of, floating around. Couldn't ever really pick a subject, so to speak. And then life necessitated that I not follow that anymore. I actually got my then girlfriend pregnant at the time, had kids. And so it was like, well, I guess I'm done with school for now. I'm just going to go work. So that's what I did.
Right.
And for many, many years, I operated a plumbing business. I worked as a manager, became very successful at that as a mechanical contractor. And so, through the years, and my kids are getting older, and I'm kind of looking around the world. And there was actually a situation in my local community where the water company there really was doing some shady things. And it had turned into a crisis. And so my neighborhood didn't have any water.
Oh, wow.
That was potable. And, it was kind of like this thing where I just got thrown into it. Obviously, I was very experienced, a master plumber in 3 different states by that point. And I'm looking at the situation. I said, nothing about this is right. And so I actually ended up calling up a friend of mine, and I said, hey, let's go to the water treatment plant and see what's going on down there. Mm-hmm. And he said, yeah, let's do it. So we actually went to the water treatment plant and took a bunch of photos and spoke to the one man that was there operating it, and got a lot of answers for the community, ended up, disseminating that through various media outlets. And there was actually a Facebook group at the time that helped us get all that information out to the community. So I guess in a lot of the ways, that was probably the first issue that I dug into in that capacity. And then that led to more opportunities, to the point where I actually started a satirical news site called the Farmington Tribune in 2018. And that became very successful. We wrote just kind of hilarious satirical stories. Some of them really dug into real issues, others were just for fun. But a lot of those stories actually went very viral through another asset that we had called Denver Tribune that was all housed under what I was doing. And so it became pretty successful. And that's really what led to me going to Armenia, because, to give more of that backstory, was that I used to respond to people who would say, oh, this is fake news, this is fake news. I would say, no, this has been independently verified by the Armenian Council for Truth in Journalism. And it was kind of like a joke, and people can actually go find that if they go to Denver 9 USA News and they search Denver Tribune and Blucifer, because we had written this story about how there's like the big blue horse in front of Denver International Airport, and we had said that they were getting rid of it because it had killed too many people, and that they were they had court proceedings at the Casa Bonita courthouse. There was just all these jokes in that. But when Denver USA 9 reached out to us for comment, that's all I responded to them. I said, well, all of our stories are independently verified by the Armenian Council for Truth in Journalism, and as far as we know, Denver USA 9 or whatever has yet to receive that standard of accreditation, which casts a shadow of doubt on the assertion that anything they report is anything other than fake news. And so it was kind of like this funny thing where we trolled, pretty much all sides of all political debates. I always tried to keep it very fair and balanced in that respect, and pick on everybody a little bit and their different confirmation bias and assumptions about the world we live in. And so that was really what spawned, the creation of the media company. And then I went to Armenia under this kind of, I guess you could call it a joke, but I had written this kind of mythology about the founding of the Armenian Council for Truth in Journalism, and said that Noah had established it when he disembarked from the ark.
Of course.
So yeah, there's a lot of layers to this, and that was why I went to Armenia, was to go find the Council for Truth in Journalism. That was kind of the idea we were working with. But that actually led me to really want to dig into some different issues. When I was over there, I had to kind of come face to face with some of the realities of human trafficking and, the slave trade, really. I don't know what else you call it. And so it was like a very, it was an inflection point in my life for sure. And so that's really what inspired me to get into journalism in and of itself. And then, of course, again, through the summer of 2020, we saw what was going on there. And I just felt that after all of our coverage of the different BLM protests, which were very good, I thought, we were applauded. Actually, one of the kids that live streamed for me from these different things, his name's Dylan Beresford. He went on to have a lot of his work actually published through New York Times. And so that was kind of a very exciting time in the summer. And, so really, my interest in everything that happened post-election was very much based in just kind of showing the other side of the coin. And so that's what I went to do. I wound up being embedded with Proud Boys essentially for, those different protests and different, demonstrations in DC. So it was all very educational on my end for sure. And I felt that it gave, what I had at the time with, the social media that I was pushing this out through at the time, was a very eclectic following of people. So it wasn't right, left, or anything else. There were people from all over the map, ideologically. And I thought it gave them a very good lens into what was really going on in all these different events throughout that summer. So that was why I was there.
Sure. So you've led us then through the story of how you started with this, how you were covering the protests that were happening in 2020. So then take us to the day of what happened. You woke up January 6th. You must have been, staying in a hotel or something, and then just go from there.
Yeah, I was, and it's like you've even got to look at a bit of the backdrop. This is something that I think people on all sides of the equation miss about January 6th was, throughout that time, those protests prior, you saw kind of a building intensity, so to speak,
right.
on the streets when it came to different confrontations between BLM, Antifa, Proud Boys, and these various groups. There was a lot of street altercations.
Sure.
That led to, some hostilities, I think, between, your typically right-wing protesters who were always, back the blue and stuff like that, where they were, you were seeing that break down. And I was watching it in live time, is how it felt.
Right.
And so that was interesting in the whole lead up to that. And I remember, when I was back in New Mexico at the time was where I lived. And I remember sitting there with my kids and I was like, man, I don't even know if I want to go out to DC this time. Cause things were just getting more intense.
Sure.
And I didn't know what was going to happen. And I remember having that conversation, and obviously I've talked about this publicly, and it was in my court filings recently where I had, different relationships with people in the intelligence community. And so I even, told them of my concerns. And in fact, I'm actually getting ready to release, there was actually some stuff that was FOIA'd that's going to show that, Department of Homeland Security was aware of a lot of things. And so, that was how I was feeling in the lead up to it. I wasn't particularly excited about going to DC, but,
sure.
At some point when you're in this business, you just kind of put your fears to the side the same way you do when you're running into, you're right in between police and protesters and there's, pepper spray and knives and everything else,
Right.
You just kind of put that to the side and you go to do the damn job. So that's what I did. I got into DC on January 4th of 2021. And, so I checked into my hotel. I was actually staying on 14th Street, right at the Hilton Garden Inn, actually, which, you can really get into a lot of the details that are kind of more, unknown about January 6th when even we talk about who else was staying there. But, so, I got up in the morning. I was actually supposed to meet with someone because I wasn't sure how I was going to cover it, as I was typically covering, street protests and stuff.
Right.
Not so much focused on, speakers so much. And so, I get in on the 4th. Sorry, to back up. And then on the 5th, I actually was out all day, and I actually did cover speakers that day, which was interesting because I was trying to stream on TikTok and generate some revenue that way, but they banned me. So that didn't work. I was already banned on Facebook at that time for doing different streams, and so really all I had left at that point was Instagram, as far as the normal social media. And actually, I got reached out to at that time by a guy from Opsland Media. He said, "Well, we've got an app that won't censor you, so you can stream there if you pull some traffic over there." And I thought, great. So that was going on. And then in the evening, I actually walked over after all the speakers were done over to BLM Plaza. And I don't know how many people in your audience, but there's a very famous video of a guy, an individual named Riots, who was, telling everyone, "Oh, we need to go into the Capitol tomorrow. We need to go into the Capitol." And then you had this other somewhat well-known individual that people can look up, named Baked Alaska, and he was saying, "No, no," and everybody started shouting at Ray Epps and calling him a Fed. So that was kind of an interesting thing that happened there. And something, in full, honesty and disclosure and all this, I mean, I had my own political leanings and beliefs about what was going on. I think it's impossible to cover things without starting to formulate your own opinions. And I was never shy about my opinions either. I felt that was part of, being more honest and truthful with people, was to give them live stream and then say, well, yeah, this is what I think, and then they can either take it or leave it. But it was interesting where I actually took a picture in front of BLM Plaza because Enrique Tarrio, the chairman of Proud Boys, he had been arrested on the 4th in association with another event that happened on December 12th that I was present for, where a Black Lives Matter banner was burned in the street, and he ended up taking responsibility for it.
Oh, I heard about that. Yeah, you were actually there when that happened?
What's that?
I heard about that event.
Yeah, I was there when that happened.
Interesting.
Yeah, I was right near Hotel Harrington. And actually, there's a whole archive. I would have to go dig it up, but I did a master thread of different tweets that was like a collection of all of this live stream from all that time. So it's like I say, most of it's preserved besides what, I didn't have downloaded whenever the feds finally decided to nuke my accounts.
Right.
So yeah, that was kind of the backdrop. That's what it was. And so there was a guy there, and he was selling T-shirts, Proud Boy Bobby Pickles, and those T-shirts said Enrique Tarrio did nothing wrong. And I said, yeah, I can get behind that because I've watched this the whole time. So I bought one of those shirts, and I stood in front of BLM Plaza, and Brendan Gutenschwager, kind of another relatively well-known journalist, he actually snapped a photo of me of that, which would then become, central later. And so, I went to bed that night. I got up in the morning. I was supposed to meet with somebody who was supposed to get me some sort of a pass, so that I could get better vantage point of Trump. And, it's my understanding that they basically had too much to drink the night before, because for those that don't know, there was a lot of drinking going on in D.C. during those days.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
It's a lot of drinking that goes on in D.C. every day, but I'm sure there was especially a lot then. Yeah.
It's the only way you can cope with it.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that's a bipartisan approach. But so I ended up, just saying, okay, well, what am I going to do? And I was milling about the Washington Monument while Trump was speaking, and so I was getting pretty much what has only ever amounted to as B-roll. Mm-hmm. It's not really anything you're going to be able to post, and people will be like, oh, yeah, thousands of likes or anything like that. So I was just doing what I could.
Sure.
And I remember Trump at some point, it's kind of famous, I think, but, when he says, and everybody, I'm going to walk down to the Capitol with you peacefully and patriotically, and he says, we're going to go to the Capitol. And the crowd was wild. And by the way, it was packed that day. There was just so many people, for those that don't know. There was so many people. It was every street was full. It was nuts.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, because I've only seen the footage from the newscast where they were showing Trump. They weren't really showing the crowds very much.
No,
No, and that's
They were.
It's funny. Yeah, and the whole scope of things is that, they've really tried to downplay how many people were there. And I've heard estimates all over the map. And I'll admit that, my ability to estimate crowd size is not always the best. But I know they thought that there was close to 500,000 people there for the first rally. And this was much bigger than that.
Wow.
So, this was definitely the most people I've ever seen in one place at all. It was nuts. And I've been to, I've been in situations where there were at least 250,000 people, 500,000 people. This was much bigger.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so, that was all going on. And so Trump says that, and I said, okay, well, I knew that there were actually planned and permitted protests at some point, somewhere near the Capitol that day. And that can all be backed up. There's a lot of evidence for that, actually, in my court filings as well. And so I knew that was going to be going on, and I said, okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and head to the Capitol. And so that would have been around 12:30 p.m. when I decided that I was going to go ahead and head to the Capitol. And so I'm walking east on the mall, and I get to the halfway point of the mall, and actually a friend of mine, a source, actually reached out at that point and said, hey, they found pipe bombs, so just, watch your ass, basically.
Right.
And I was like, okay, noted. And I continued walking to the Capitol. I estimate that I got there because I had started my live stream, you know, and mind you, I was going in and out from the OpsLens app. It was not connecting right. You know, it's like the bandwidth was just too saturated. That was a problem the whole time.
Oh, yeah.
You couldn't get a good connection. I finally got a connection on Instagram, so that's what I went with. I said, well, you know, this is what it is. And so as I went to the Capitol, by then, it had already kind of gone to shit in some ways. I hope I can say that. I didn't get you an FCC or anything. But,
I'll have to edit that one out, but that's okay. Not a problem.
Yeah, I know. You got to watch me. And so, you know, it was already, you know, a tense situation for sure.
Right.
I didn't know exactly what had happened prior. You know, in the aftermath, you can go back and look at the timeline, and obviously there was a breach where that same individual, Ray Epps, had whispered into a guy named Ryan Samsel's ear, and that was what preceded Ryan Samsel then knocking over the bike racks into Officer Carolyn Edwards, who testified at the January 6th hearing, and, you know, lied. Objectively, she lied at that hearing if you look at the actual video of the incident and the timestamps. But so all that happened prior, and when I got there, you know, there was, it's really hard for me to say. It wasn't like the most massive group of people I've ever seen, but let's just, for sake of argument, say 1,000 people.
Sure.
And I don't even know at that time if it was that much. But it's like I saw that there was something going on, and so, like always, I just go right up into it and try to get right between, you know, whatever's going on. And there was a line of police right by the northwest side of the inauguration stage scaffolding that had been set up. And so that's where I initially set up and was running my live stream there. So I didn't know if you had any questions or if I'll just keep going.
Yeah. I'm very intrigued by hearing it from your perspective because, you know, the only perspective that I've heard so far, other than just, you know, reading articles from people, is just how the news covered it. So hearing it from your direct perspective is an intriguing thing for myself, and I'm sure for the listeners as well. So go ahead and continue, and we will ask questions as we go.
Yeah, absolutely. So it seemed to me like that was where the line of demarcation was, based off of what I had seen coming up. It's like, okay, well, there's a police line, and then you have protesters. This is nothing new. Now, this is important in the entire scope of things because for those that don't know, they have basically said that there was this invisible line around the Capitol, and anybody who went on that on those grounds was in violation of, I can't remember the exact statute, okay? But that's the way they framed it, was that anybody who went on there was in violation. So technically, according to that, you know, everybody that was there was already on the grounds. But I can speak from my experience that I didn't see any sort of, you know, signs or anything else. You know, again, the Capitol was very unguarded that day.
Yeah, clearly. Gotcha.
Yeah, and that's, you know, it's like I say, I told you we'd fill an hour up quick.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're already 20 minutes in, and we're still at the beginning of the day.
Exactly. So, you know, so that's where I was, and it was this it wasn't really hostile at that point, right?
Okay.
At that point, I mean, obviously you had protesters that were there, you know, to make their redress of grievance heard. And the police were there, obviously understaffed. And then there was like the group of protesters started pushing up that west side stairway up to the upper west terrace of the Capitol building.
Right. Okay.
And so I think a lot of people have seen a lot of that. Some of the more underseen things were the fact that, so I'm standing in that grass, right? And now I didn't see this with my own eyes at that time, so I need to clarify this, that I had my camera on my phone essentially pointed in that direction, but I was not looking at it with my own eyes, okay? I'm looking elsewhere, and, you know, you just keep your head about you in these situations. And in video later, we see that a Capitol police officer shoved a man off of those stairs, and he fell, you know, anywhere between, you know, 20 to 40 feet.
Jeez.
Yeah. So a Capitol police officer shoved that guy off the stairs. He hit the ground right next to me. And I'm telling you, he looked dead.
Jeez.
I thought he was dead. I turned around and I'm like, well, he's not responsive. He's not moving. This guy's dead. And then everyone's screaming, they're saying they pushed him off the stairs. They pushed him off the stairs. And then the crowd really got a little bit more heated.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, the officer that pushed him was flipping the crowd off after that.
Got it.
So, that was kind of a pretty important moment in the entire timeline of events that they've really not liked to report, as far as mainstream sources go.
Sure.
And,
I don't remember anyone talking about that. I may have read about it, but I don't remember that. Yeah, that's really interesting. And there's video of this?
Yes, there's video of this.
Okay, I'll have to find it. Interesting. Okay, continue.
Yep. And like I say, we can chat, at some point. I can point in the direction of all sorts of information. So, so that happened. The crowd obviously gets a little more, heated. And I remember there was a cop. The cops didn't look like they were in a good situation either. I mean, the crowd was bigger than them, and they were not happy. And, kind of, if you look at it, you can come up with whatever excuses you want for what happened with the cop shoving the guy, but it didn't help the situation.
Sure, yeah.
And so then the tear gas started, and then, pepper balls, and it was just all very random and into the crowd.
Right.
So that's another thing a lot of people don't realize is that the police were just shooting, tear gas canisters and flashbang grenades off into the crowd with no declaration of a riot, which for anybody who's ever covered a riot, that's a problem. You have to let people know that they're in some sort of violation and to leave before you just start shooting them.
Right.
But that didn't happen. And so, again, you're dealing with a lot of veterans and people who bled for this country, and they weren't happy about it. I mean, I don't know what else to say. And so, people are there with their wives, they're older. I don't know how they expected people to react, and it's my opinion. After 2 years digging in, that was the reaction they wanted. And so, at some point they do all this, and then the police just stand down. And I know someone was the other day in one of these other spaces we talked. There's a lot of discussion that goes on, but they essentially stood down, and then protesters started moving up that west staircase and onto the upper west terrace. And so at that point, I was like, okay, well, this is what we're doing. This is what's going on. I guess I'm going with it. So you go up to the west stairs and on that west terrace, and I go up to the top of the inauguration scaffolding. There was a stair that went up to the top of that. And so I wanted to try to get a shot of the crowd looking back toward the Washington Monument. And when I got to the top of the stairs, there was a female police officer up there, and I've always said, she reminds me of Sergeant Callahan or Lieutenant Callahan from Police Academy. She had aviator sunglasses on, blonde, and she wasn't taking anybody's crap. And she ordered me. She said, "You get down right now." I said, "Yes, ma'am." And so that's what I did. Got down off the scaffolding, went back down the stairs, and back onto that upper west terrace. And so at that time, it was like everybody had been funneled towards the Senate entry. Okay, there was like a Senate door on that west side, and so that was where the initial breach of the building occurred.
Okay.
And so this is kind of an interesting thing that's been dug up, but there was a gentleman there, or whatever we want to call him, but there's an unidentified individual there. With a mask and a red hat, he takes a 2x4 and he breaks that window out right near the Senate entrance.
Right.
And then Dominic Pizzola, who's they're actually on trial right now, and they were going through his stuff today in D.C. But he actually took a police riot shield at that point. He clears out that window. So this occurred at approximately 2:13 p.m. And I was not watching that or present while that was going on. I was a little bit further back by another door that goes into the Senate wing of the building.
Okay.
And so there's that initial breach, and again, I'm not seeing this with my eyes, but looking at video later, people started to enter in through that window, and there was actually these two gentlemen that I've now been able to track back to another window right there at that entry, and they entered like maybe at 2:14, okay? and they make a beeline directly through the building. They had to know where they were going.
Right.
Because then they came to the door that I was standing near, and they opened it from the inside. And so I don't see any of this. All I see is doors open from the inside. Okay?
Right.
You know, a lot of this is analysis that I've done after the fact. But they open the doors from the inside. The doors open, and so people start going in there. And so that was where I made my initial entry into the Capitol. And so I went into that door. There was a female police officer who kind of came down a set of stairs there. It's right near the Senate Parliamentarian's office. And she said, oh, okay, well, you know, you guys, you can't be in this area of the building. I need you to go. And I said, oh, you know, I'm a journalist. And she said, no, I understand. She said, I understand. I said, oh, okay. And then another cop kind of came up, and he guided me out. And I remember just kind of jokingly saying to him, I said, well, thanks for not kicking my ass. And then I went back out that door. But then by then, you had a lot of people that were then flowing into the building where the initial breach had occurred. And so I went ahead and followed along with them and right into there. And that led, as I headed south from the building, to the crypt area that sits directly below the Capitol Dome and the Rotunda. And so that's a room with a bunch of pillars and other things. And the police had essentially set up some form of a line in there. And so I remember standing, you know, right in between, as always. And, you know, there was a lot of chanting and USA stuff and all that going on. There was an individual there, Zachary Allen, and he was being incredibly agitated. So he was cursing at police and really just, you know, being extra, I guess we could say.
Sure.
And so, you know, I actually told him to shut up because I was standing right next to him at that time. And then the crowd pushed from behind at that point. And so there was actually a police officer in front of me at that time that kind of got knocked over as the crowd moved through. And I vaguely remember picking him up by his shirt and trying to get him to his feet. And then it just stood down again, and then everything was weird. So again, you know, I would always stress with this, I'm not one of those who says that everything was peaceful or that everything was violent. It's just bizarre. So this is more of that, where, okay, so you've got this situation, and then all of a sudden it's chill again, and the police are just like kind of cool with everybody being there.
Right. That is strange.
So it's like, okay. Ended up going down another hallway, and this is why this is kind of another interesting point. I'm going to try to describe this as best of my ability. So as you head south, then there was another hallway that then headed back to the west, you know, towards Washington Monument in that direction. And as I went down that hallway, there was another group of people there, actually Luke Mogelson of New Yorker magazine. He was right there as well, and another individual, Captain Gabriel Garcia, who's also wrapped up in all this and charged and facing decades in prison. And so there was this situation. Now, the Department of Justice, they described it, and they said that the police there were blocking the hallway and preventing protesters from moving any further. My video that did survive from my live stream, somebody screen recorded this portion of it, actually proved that to just be objectively false.
Interesting.
Because at that time I said, and again, this is something I admitted to. You know, I did plead guilty, and I always debated whether or not this crossed the line. I still debate whether or not it crossed the line as a journalist. But I did say to the policeman there, I said, "Brother, stand with us." Now, you know, it's like I've thought about that statement for a long time. You know, as far as, you know, what it meant in the entire sphere of everything, and I've written extensively about that. You know, you know, in retrospect, I wish I would have kept my mouth shut at that moment, for sure. But it is what it is. And you know, the police, again, were not issuing any commands at that time, and this can be seen in the video. They weren't giving any orders, they weren't giving any direction, and they did not permit anyone from moving further down that hallway, because they ended up actually just leading people down that hallway. And what's interesting about this is that then, and I didn't follow along. I just had a feeling in my gut, something didn't sit right. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. I've got a friend who calls it the witch gut. My witch gut was going off, and I just didn't like the situation. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, when you look at the video later, what happened after I broke away from that particular group was that they actually led them then to another set of exterior doors, and those police opened those exterior doors in the guise of letting protesters out. But what actually happened was then protesters started coming in those doors. Mm-hmm. And then there's a relatively famous video of that police officer standing there as people come in, and he says to people as they're coming in, "Yeah, I don't agree with it, but I respect it." And they're just letting people in. And then other people that were in that same group of protesters ended up, you know, going into the Senate wing. Jacob Chansley, the QAnon shaman, and all of those people that went into the actual Senate chamber, they are all facing years and years and years in prison now, regardless of whether or not they were violent that day. Mm-hmm. So yeah, interesting. I ended up going the other direction. You know, I remember I was actually flirting with a Capitol Police officer named Miles, because she was kind of cute, and I am how I am. And then I ended up going up a set of stairs. And again, very bizarre, because you've got this situation, like obviously where I'm able to flirt with a Capitol Police officer. Then you've got another person, you know, over and just, you know, a few feet away, like washing, you know, pepper spray out of their eyes or whatever. So it just, I cannot reiterate just how bizarre all of it was to just take in. I went up the stairs into the rotunda area from that area, the main rotunda, and people were just kind of hanging around. There was nothing crazy going on at all. And so I just kind of began walking around, and I went into the statuary hall, you know, kind of observed all that was going on, and then there's a hallway that connects the statuary with the house side of the building, and then that hallway then would lead to the speaker's chambers. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of camped out in that hallway for a minute. I was drinking a bottle of water. And so there was some back and forth going on of people saying, "Oh, well, we're here to peacefully assemble and we want our voices heard." And the police are saying, "Okay, well, we're going to see what we can do to make that happen." And they ended up essentially just letting people move through that hallway. Now, again, I'm just hanging out, camping out, just taking a minute, you know. And then of course, I heard a gunshot around that time. And that would have been the gunshot where Michael Byrd, you know, shot Ashley Babbitt. Right. And interestingly enough, going back to that same guy that was instigating down in the crypt area, Zachary Allen, he's the one who actually broke the window and was yelling at police at the doors to the speaker's chamber where Ashley Babbitt then, you know, tried to move through that door and was shot and killed. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there was a gunshot, and then I saw, you know, what I believe to have been Department of Homeland Security, you know, like federal law enforcement, then come moving through, heavily armed. And then there was some more police that came back from the other way, and they said, "Okay, everybody back into the rotunda." And I said, "Okay." Again, you know, that's something I've learned even in the streets. When the cops tell you what to do, you just do it. You know, you're a journalist and you're there to cover, but, you know, it is what it is. Lawful orders and what have you.
Sure.
So they said, "Everybody back into the rotunda." All right, back into the rotunda. So I moved in that direction, got back into the rotunda, and by the time I got into the rotunda, and I can't remember the individual's name, but he had sparked up a bunch of joints, and so there was a lot of pot being smoked and passed around in the rotunda. It was bizarre. And I remember
the first time that's ever happened. That's pretty funny.
Well, yeah, no, it was again, it was weird, and in me, you know, for those that don't know, it's like, you know, I'm the child of a hippie, so, you know, my dad was in D.C. for the anti-war protests in 1973, and I'm sitting here thinking, okay, well, I guess this is what they talk about when they say, like, a sit-in. So I thought it was going to be some sort of a peaceful sit-in. You know, and by this time, I had actually lost my connection on my live stream. And the sad part about everything that I've just told you is that, with the exception of the screen-recorded section and, of course, surveillance footage from inside the building, you know, it's like I lost all of my footage from that part, and that's never sat well with me. But yeah, so I decided to have a seat in the rotunda. I'm just taking all of it in, for whatever it's worth. And I'm trying to text my mom and let her know I'm okay, because I'm sure it's all being reported on the news. I have no idea what's going on outside the building or anything.
Right.
And it all seemed pretty chill. And then from looking at body cam footage, but I started recording, not live, but I started recording. And because the police just came in and started, going crazy a little bit.
Okay. Yeah. What did you see there?
Yeah. So, it turned into a horrible situation where everyone was being crushed.
Right.
As the police were trying to shove everybody out, and there were people trying to shove in through the Columbus doors there. It was a bad situation. I wasn't sure I was going to make it out of that one. It was just a lot of pressure on all sides. And, you've got police doing what they're doing. There was a woman right in front of me, and this video is all available to see.
Sure.
There was a woman in front of me, and she passed out, and I remember putting my hand out to the police officer in front of me, and I was like holding his chest and just trying to keep anybody from stepping on her. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so, I'm screaming, make some room, and some other colorful language about how to make some room. And the police, there was one right there, and he was trying to work with me. He understood how, dangerous it was. And they ended up kind of dragging her behind the line. And then, of course, it just went back to it. And again, some of the cops there that day were very good, and other cops were very bad. Just like the people. You get bad and good on all sides of these things. It doesn't matter whose politics are involved.
Right.
And so there was one officer there, and Huff is his name, and he kept jamming me in the ribs. And at some point in my video, you hear me, can you please not do that? Because there was no reason for it, in my opinion. It's like, so they're just trying to shove everybody out. And then all of a sudden the pressure lands. I don't really know what happened. And then they say, okay, everybody here is under arrest.
Wow.
I'm sitting here going, okay, well, I'll grab my media. Yeah, I'll grab my media paperwork and we'll just deal with this. I guess maybe I'm going to go spend the night in D.C. jail to cool off or something until they figure it out. And then they say, oh, we're going to give you clear directions. And then they didn't give clear directions. And then they're like, okay, everybody out. So then I start kind of going in the direction. Then another cop shoves me and he says, no, you're staying right here, buddy. And I'm going, okay, well, what do you want me to do? And then finally they just go, okay, everybody out.
Right.
And so, they kind of directed us all out. I left the building. I went out through what they call the memorial doors, and went on the west, it would have been the east side of the building where I exited. And I kind of stood around, took that in. I talked with some other media that were kind of positioned out there. Went over to the Supreme Court. I spoke with a couple of police officers over there, tried to get an idea of what they thought was going on. Of course, they wouldn't say anything, which is fine. And then I walked back towards the west side of the building where by then, the crowd had gotten considerably larger, and there was an American flag, kind of draped from the top of the inauguration scaffolding, and it was crazy because it was like there was this party atmosphere going on there. But after everything I'd experienced, it was a little weird. And then I was getting phone calls from another guy that I did some contributions to, Rocky Stucci, and he said, "Hey, can you come on the show tonight?" I said, "Yeah, I can do that." And so I went ahead and walked back to the hotel, and I did my media appearances. And then by the time I was even thinking about going back to the Capitol to maybe cover more, police had pretty much decided that they were going to go ahead and start locking everyone in their hotel rooms. So you couldn't even go outside and have a cigarette or anything else. And that was how I went to bed that evening.
Wow. Interesting. Well, and like I said, I appreciate you coming on the show and telling us your perspective, because something that's important to me is just for people to be able to tell their story and for people to be able to make up their own mind. So,
Yeah.
I'm sure we disagree on a lot of different things, But that's fine. The way that we have a functioning democracy is by listening to each other and understanding what everybody has to say. So we've got about 15 minutes left in the program, and so I've got a couple of questions for you. And again, like I said, my goal is to listen to what you have to say. I'm not, the goal is not to be like, oh, how dare you? The goal is to say, the goal is to find the truth, and I think that it's clear from what you've said that that's your goal as well. So the thing that is really concerning to me is there's a lot of different perspectives on this. That some people say, oh, it was all a hoax, or it was all Antifa, or it was all this, or it was all that. Basically, what do you think happened? Do you think that it was orchestrated? Do you think that it was just a mob going out of control? Do you think that Mr. Trump encouraged people to do it? What is your perspective on that?
If we're being really honest, we could probably say a little bit of all of the above. I think that it was kind of a perfect storm. Of circumstances that led to it. I think that there was, and I've done a lot of work to try to dig into, what happened as far as chain of command with police, National Guard, Mayor Muriel Bowser, President Trump, General Milley. The list goes on and on. Nancy Pelosi, the Sergeant of Arms, that's now mysteriously dead before he was supposed to testify. There was a lot of things. One of the big underreported things that people should really look into is the death of Roseanne Boyland. They said that she died from a methamphetamine overdose. That's just simply not true. She was beaten to death savagely by D.C. Metro police officer Lila Morris, who was then hailed as a hero. Wow. I've watched the video of her death so many times it makes me sick. So there's a lot that's just simply not reported now. As far as whether or not there was orchestration, I think that there's a lot of evidence to that fact that, like I said, there's just weird things that are hard to believe that it just happened by chance, like those individuals who went into that Senate entry and then, less than 2 minutes later had found their way through the building to open up the door from the inside. Most of the entry into the building came through doors that were open from the inside. Now, whether or not, so I know that on the Columbus doors, George Tinney, who I can't remember, I believe he's already been sentenced. But he opened those doors, and, so that's something where you can say, well, that was a Trump supporter. The other ones I have questions about. Obviously, there was the other set of doors that were opened by police. And then you have the set of doors that were opened by the unidentified individuals who opened the doors and just left. Now, I have a lot of friends that have worked different influence operations and different things throughout the world. And there's a lot about January 6th that resembles some of those things. So I think that there was a certain amount orchestrated, but I think people have to have a good understanding of just how easy it is to manipulate a crowd because of, different hive mind realities that occur when you get people in large groups. There does become a mob mentality to it, and so they become very easy to manipulate. And it wouldn't take that many people. And I think that when you say, well, why did January 6th happen? Like, if you investigate any crime, the first question you should ask is who benefits.
Right.
And, as someone who, and I'll say this in full transparency, that what I would like to have seen that day, personally, was a 10-day investigation into the claims of voter fraud. And when I look at what happened because of January 6th, and this is what upset me so much about it, was that it shut down that process. Because they recessed, and then when they came back, everybody that came back to vote on the certification was essentially doing so under political duress because they said, well, we can't allow our democracy to be stopped by the raging mob of insurrectionists. And then they pushed it through, and you never got an investigation. So when I ask that question and I say who benefits, it certainly wasn't Trump supporters that benefited that day. It certainly wasn't me on a personal level. Obviously, 2 years later, after everything I'd lost due to the government's decision to prosecute me.
Right.
So, I think that kind of might inform a bit more objective analysis.
That's very interesting, and I appreciate that you are willing to admit that there were mistakes. And obviously not just on the side of one or the other. That the police made mistakes, the protesters made mistakes. There's no question on that, and I appreciate you being humble enough to admit that, because something that we don't see enough in the. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the show. Today we are reacting to how our documentary came out, and I was just going to do a little experiment with some music. Let's see how it sounds. Let's hear it.
Whatever's happening right now, something is happening.
It's perfect.
Matt Gates was on
Well done.
last night, and I missed most of it, and I tried to get on there, and I listened to it for a bit, but I didn't get to hear all of it. So at least they're getting on. So all we have to do is push. I also will say when
Push.
first went in,
The people of Congress.
I contacted
Of
Lee
course, to be clear.
Gilbert's office. They did contact
Yes.
me back. He is an advocate too, so maybe call that guy. I mean, I don't know, like all of them. Yes, I call all the time.
Oh,
And
good for you.
That's all you can do, and pray a lot.
Yeah, I joined that Twitter space with Lauren Boebert and Matt Gates last night too.
Okay, Lauren Boebert and
I
Matt
missed,
Gates. Lauren
Gary
Boebert
Wa-
and Matt Gates, two of the strongest supporters of the January 6th insurrection.
Genius.
Both of them members of Congress. So, they are going to Congress to get permission to storm Congress again. Interesting strategy. Let's continue.
Genius. We're gonna get help from Congress to help us storm Congress.
Large portion of it, so I don't know what they were talking about prior to, but when I got on there, it was something about Colorado waterways, and then, I don't know, I started seeing some chance fixers join the space, and Matt Gates was like, oh, well, I gotta go have dinner with my family, and I was like, well, that's nice. I don't know, like 5 people all joined at the same time. I'm not saying that's why he left. I don't want to make any accusations, but I think my point here is that we're going to have to really start holding, making phone calls. I mean, this campaign just has to continue. And, we're going to have to get the information out so people know how to make these phone calls and, be relentless. Stay on top of it. I think that FBI guy had it right when he said he sets an alarm, and he does it 3 times a week, and he makes all his phone calls at 9 o'clock in the morning when he starts his day, and it usually takes anywhere between 5 and 30 minutes, but he invests that time in the day to, talk about things that he cares about. Obviously, we all have different causes, but I thought that was absolutely a great idea. So,
Jesus Christ, these
my
people are
2 cents.
insane.
Is it Pack Chick? Sorry, you've had your hand up for a really long time. Go ahead.
Yep, it's Fact Chick, the Italian mother. That was kind of funny. I had just joined the space when he mentioned that, so it's kind of funny. I think the spaces are very important. I think it's important that we all speak to each other. Then again, we're not going to get those people out of prison with just this spaces thing, okay? So we have to take action, as you know. I mean, I don't know if you remember yesterday when I was speaking. I've collected from the federal government for probably 40 years now. And this is how they work. You have to...
You have to take action, you say. You have to take action. I wonder what action they want to take. I wonder if they explained in great detail in multiple sections of this audio what action they would like to take. Let's find out, shall we? Let's.
Stick them. You have to be on them. Call them every half an hour if you have to, until you get a large body on them.
Call them every
These
half
people do
hour.
not
call their senators and their congresspeople every half hour. Okay, not illegal, but very, very, very weird and radical. All right, let's continue.
Care about you. And in order to make them care about you, you have to be an obnoxious Italian mother, pain in the ass. Now, yesterday I published,
I'm glad that you guys are able to describe yourselves so accurately. Obnoxious, annoying, pains in the ass. Oh, let me add another descriptor for you. Traitors to our nation. Next question.
Correct.
I had Helena do it, I guess. A list, 36 pages, of all of the phone numbers of all of the state representatives, and it's by state, do whatever you want, okay? I offered to take the first 2 pages, which I am working on and have been working on all day. Matt Gaetz has 4 phone call messages from me now. Take a couple of pages off of that printout and just call them. And call them every day if you have to. Take an hour of your time and call them every day. You will eventually wear them down. It's just going to take persistence and just being a pain in the ass.
Well, how does that make you feel, good sir?
I think people have nothing better to do all fucking day.
I think they have nothing better to do than obstruct Congress, which is what they were trying to do in the first place.
I think so.
Therefore, I think that we should expose their many, many crimes and expose the fact that they are trying to get justice, i.e. their form of justice, i.e. released on all charges, pardoned, and treated as national heroes. Now, do you think they deserve those things?
No. Next question.
Correct.
That's how you do it. That's the only way.
Actually, with the idea, John Whitman, I've been, I started out as an independent journalist in 2019.
There's your son.
Actually, with the idea.
Sounds really good.
Covering issues in Eastern Europe of all places, and elsewhere on the globe.
It does.
So that actually started.
I'll adjust the volume.
I think I
Again, just getting the idea.
That and excited about the future. Actually ended up taking another trip to the United Kingdom, traveled over to the United Kingdom, and working towards these kind of satirical documentaries. There's a lot of backstory here. We want to get into it, but that was our satire into kind of more realistic journalism. We started a podcast called the Armenian Council for Truth and Journalism in 2020. Pretty much, and we did that night. Ended up covering a lot of the BLM, kind of associated protests and riots throughout the summer of 2020. So I was kind of deeply involved in a lot of that, covering that. And then in November, obviously, we all saw issues with the election, whatever people may or may not think about that. There was issues, and so I ended up going to Washington, D.C. in November to cover the original Million Bag of March. And so that's what I did. I ended up following, like the Stop and Steal protests or whatever all around the country. I was in Atlanta, I was in Phoenix, and actually D.C. 3 times. January 6th was, I guess, the culmination of that coverage.
Got it. Okay, so you were on the ground covering it for your media outlet, website, YouTube channel?
Yep. I had a variety of different outlets that were all housed under my media company. So there were all sorts of things that were under that. And like I say, the nightly podcast for our media council because all of those things deleted by YouTube because in the aftermath of the Department of Justice charging me for being there, they deleted all of that record.
Got it. Okay. Do you have some type of archive of that, or is it just completely gone?
Well, I got it in different places.
Great.
Say again?
This song is great for this.
Yeah, great choice on that. I really like it.
Because the censorship just being rampant, and that was all throughout the summer. It didn't matter if we were covering BLM protests or MAGA protests. There was just rampant censorship going on, and now we know, based off the filings that come out in Missouri and everything else, there was a lot of, I guess we could say, collusion at the very least between different government agencies, Facebook, Meta, Twitter, and all of that. So I think as this entire investigation of what went on
Match issue. Okay.
we're going to be able to dig into that and find out a lot more of just how involved the government was in censorship on these various social media platforms.
Okay, interesting. So before we get into what happened that day, tell me about what drew you into journalism. Like I have my own story of just I love investigating things that complex, interesting issues, and trying to bring justice to those difficult situations. And so, what is that journey been like for you?
I think that's why people get into it. If I kind of wind back the clock a long way, I can actually go back to when I was a child and I was kind of interested in journalism. And then when I started going to college, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I was studying sociology, anthropology, philosophy, just kind of, floating around. Never really
I love it.
subject, so to speak.
That's awesome. Classical music was great.
Good.
Then I not follow that anymore. I actually got my then girlfriend.
Goodbye.
You're cute.
You're a cute boy.
And so it was like, well,
I guess I'll smack my own ass.
that's what I did.
Right.
And for many, many years, I operated a plumbing business. I worked as a manager, became very successful at that, as a mechanical contractor. And so, through the years, and my kids are getting older, and I'm kind of looking around the world, and there was actually a situation in my local community where the water company there really was doing some shady things. And it had turned into a crisis, and so my neighborhood didn't have any water.
Oh wow.
That was potable, and it was kind of like this thing where I just got thrown into it. Obviously, I was very experienced, a master plumber in 3 different states by that point, and I'm looking at the situation. I said nothing about this is right, and so I actually ended up calling up a friend of mine and I said, hey, let's go to the water treatment plant and see what's going on down there. And he said, yeah, let's do it. So we actually went to the water treatment plant and took a bunch of photos and spoke to the one man that was there operating it and got a lot of answers. The community ended up, disseminating out through various media outlets. And there was actually a Facebook group at the time that helped us get all that information out to the community. So I guess in a lot of the ways that was probably the first issue that I dug into in that capacity. And then that led into more opportunities to the point where I actually started a satirical news site called the Farmington Tribune in 2018. And that became very successful. We wrote kind of hilarious satirical stories. Some of them really dug into the issues, which was fun. But a lot of those stories actually went very clear. Through another asset that we had called Denver Tribune that was all housed under what I was doing. And so it became pretty successful. And that's really what led to me going to Armenia because, to give more of that backstory, was that I used to respond to people who would say, oh, this is fake news, this is fake news. I would say, no, this has been independently verified by the Armenian Council for Truth and Journalism. And it was kind of like a joke, and people can actually go find that. They go to Denver 9 USA News, and they search Denver Tribune and Lucifer, because we had written this story about there's like a big blue horse in front of Denver International Airport, and we had said that they were getting rid of it because it had killed too many people, and that they were going to they had court proceedings because of unneeded when Denver USA 9 reached out to us for comment, that's all I responded to. I said, well, all of our sources have been verified by the Armenian Council for Truth and Journalism, and as far as we know, Denver USA 9 or whatever has yet to receive that standard of accreditation, which casts a shadow of doubt on the assertion that anything they reported, anything other than fake news.
Dude, that's dope.
Thank you.
Pretty much all sides, all political debates. I always try that very fair and balanced in that respect, and pick on everybody a little bit and their different confirmation bias and assumptions about the world we live in. And so that was really what spawned, the creation of the media company. And then I went to Armenia under this kind of, I guess you could call it a joke. But I had written this kind of mythology about the founding of the Armenian Council for Truth and Journalism, and said that Noah had established it when he disembarked from the Ark.
Of course.
So yeah, there's a lot of layers to this, and that was why I went to Armenia, was to go find the Council for Truth and Journalism. That was kind of the idea we were working with. But that actually led me to really want to dig into some different issues. When I was over there, I had to kind of come face to face with some of the realities of human trafficking and the slave trade, really. I don't know what else you call it. And so it was like a very, it was an inflection point in my life for sure. And so that's really what inspired me to get into journalism itself. And then of course, again, through the summer of 2020, we saw what was going on there. And I just felt that after all of our coverage of the different BLM protests, which was very good, I thought, we were applauded. Actually, one of the kids that live streamed for me from these different things, his name's Dylan Beresford. He went on to have a lot of his work actually published through New York Times. And so that was kind of a very exciting time in the summer. And, so really, my interest in everything that happened post-election was very much based in just kind of showing the other side of the coin. So that's what I went to do. I wound up being embedded with Proud Boys essentially for, those different protests and different, demonstrations in D.C. So it was all very educational on my end for sure. And I felt that it gave, what I had at the time, social media that was out there at the time, was a very eclectic following of people. So it wasn't right, left, or anything else. There were people from all over the map, ideologically. And I thought it gave them a very good lens into what was really going on in different events throughout that summer. So that was why I was there.
Sure. So you've led us then through the story of how you started with this, how you were covering the protests that were happening in 2020. So then take us to the day of what happened. You woke up January 6th. You must have been, staying in a hotel or something, and then just go from there.
Yeah, and it's like you've even got to look at a bit of the backdrop. This is something that I think people on all sides of the equation missed about January 6th. Was, throughout that time, those protests of Tyre, you saw kind of a building intensity, so to speak, on the street when it came to different confrontations between BLM, Antifa, Proud Boys, and these various groups. And there was a lot of street altercations.
Sure.
That led to, some hostilities, I think, between, your typically right-wing protesters who were always, back to blue and stuff like that, where they were, you were seeing that break down. And I was watching it in real time, is how it felt.
Right.
And so that was interesting, the whole lead up to that. And I remember, when I was back in New Mexico at the time, was where I lived. And I remember sitting there with my kids, and I was like, man, I don't even know if I want to go out to D.C. this time. Because things were just getting more intense.
Sure.
And,
Yeah.
and I didn't know what was going to happen. And I remember having that conversation, and obviously I've talked about this publicly, where then it was in my court filings recently, where I had, different relationships with people in the intelligence community. And so I even, told them of my concern. And in fact, I'm actually getting ready to release, there was actually some stuff that was FOIA was going to show that, Department of Homeland Security was aware of a lot of things. And so, you know, that was how I was feeling in the lead up to it. I wasn't particularly excited about going to DC, but you know, at some point when you're in this business, you just kind of put your fears to the side, the same way you do when you're running into, you know, you're right between police and protesters, and there's, you know, pepper spray and knives and everything else.
Right.
You just kind of put that to the side and go do the damn job. So that's what I did. I got into DC on January 4th of 2021, and you know, so I checked into my hotel. I was actually staying on 14th Street, right at the Hilton Garden Inn, actually, which you know, you can really get into a lot of the details that are kind of more unknown about January 6th when we even talk about who else was staying there. But so you know, I got up in the morning and I was actually supposed to meet with someone because I wasn't sure how I would cover it. You know, I was typically covering, you know, street protests and stuff.
Right.
Not so much focused on, you know, speakers so much. And so, you know, I get it on the 4th. Sorry, to back up. And then on the 5th, I actually was out all day and actually did cover speakers that day, which was interesting because I was trying to stream on TikTok and generate some revenue that way, but they banned me. So that didn't work. I was already banned on Facebook at that time for doing different streams, and so, you know, really all I had left at that was Instagram as far as more social media. And actually, I got reached out to at that time by a guy from Boston. He said, "Well, we got an app that will censor you."
Wow. You are cute. You're cute.
So that was going on, and then in the evening, I actually walked.
Do you want anything to eat or drink, my dear? I do. Popcorn. Popcorn?
And,
Okay.
you know, I don't know how
Popcorn? Yes.
there's a very famous
I
video
have Schnackle. And I'll be back with popcorn in a minute.
who was, you know, telling everyone, "Oh, we need to go into the Capitol. We need to go into the Capitol." And then you have this other somewhat well-known individual that people can look up named Bake Alaska, who's saying, "No, no," and everybody started shouting at Red and calling him dead. So that was kind of an interesting thing that happened there. And something, you know, in you know, honesty and disclosure moments, I mean, I had my own political leanings and beliefs about what was going on. I think it's important to cover things without starting to formulate your own opinion. I was never shy about my opinions either. You know, I felt that was part of, you know, being more honest and truthful with people to give them my stream and then say, well, this is what I think, and then they can either take it or leave it. But it was anything where I
Purge the head. Kill all the non-believers.
He ended up taking responsibility for it.
I heard about that. Yeah, you were actually there when that happened? I heard about that event. Interesting. Okay.
I was right here until and actually, I mean, there's a whole lot of times I just have read a collection of all of those live streams from all that time. So it's like I said, most of it's preserved, right? But, you know, I didn't have download whenever the Feds finally decided to nuke my account.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, that was kind of the backdrop. That's what it was. And so there was a guy there, John Weaver, probably called Nichols, and those T-shirts said, "Are you think Tyre did nothing wrong?" And I said, "Yeah, I can get behind that because that's what I'm doing." So I bought one of those shirts and I said, "From the Plaza is Brennan Gooch Longer, kind of another relatively well-known journalist. He actually snapped a photo of me and that, which would then become, you know, digital later. And so, you know, I was spent that night. I got up in the morning and was supposed to meet with somebody who was supposed to give me some sort of a class, you know, so they could get better vantage point of Trump. And, you know, it's my understanding that they basically had too much to drink the night before because I know that there was a lot of drinking going on in D.C. right now.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
There's a lot of drinking that goes on in D.C. But I'm sure there was especially a lot happening. Yeah.
It's the only way.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that's a fine. But so I ended up, just saying, okay, what am I going to do? And I was milling about the Washington Monument while Trump was speaking, and so I was getting pretty much what his only ever allowed to do as B-roll. It's not really anything you're going to be able to pose, because people will be like, oh yeah, thousands of likes or anything like that. So I was just doing what I could.
Sure.
And I remember Trump at some point, it's kind of famous, I think, but when he says, and everybody, I'm going to walk down to the Capitol with you peacefully and patriotically, and he says, we're going to go to the Capitol, and everybody, the crowd was wild, and by the way, it was packed, so many people,
Yeah.
I mean, there was so many people, I mean, it was every street was nuts.
Interesting. Yeah, because I've only seen the footage from the newscast where they were showing Trump. They weren't really showing the crowds very much. No,
No, and that's something funny. Yeah, and the whole scope of things is that, they really tried to downplay people. My ability to estimate that was not always the best. I know they thought that there was close to 500,000 people there. This was much bigger than that. So, this was definitely a lot of people. No, it was not. And I've been in situations where these people are much bigger.
Okay.
Yeah, so, that was all going on. And so Trump said that, and I said, okay, well, I knew that there were actually planned and permitted protests at some point, somewhere near the Capitol that day, and that can all be backed up. There's a lot of evidence that actually is as well. And so I knew that was going to be going on, and I said, okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and head to the Capitol. So that would have been around 12:30 p.m. when I decided that I was going to go ahead and head to the Capitol. And so I walked east on the wall, and I get to the halfway to the wall, and actually a friend of mine, Force, actually reached out to that point and said, hey, they found light bombs, so just, watch your ass.
Right.
And I was like, okay, noted. And I continued walking to the Capitol. I estimate that I got there, because I had started my life, and mind you, I was going in and back out because the opposite that, it was not connecting right. It's like the bandwidth was just too saturated. And you couldn't get a good connection. Finally got a connection on Instagram, so that's what I did. Well, this is what it is. And so as I went to the Capitol by then, it had already kind of gone to shit in some ways. I don't know if I can say that. I didn't get you an SEC or anything. But,
We'll have to edit that one out, but that's okay. Not
yeah, I know. And so, it was already a tense situation for sure.
right.
I didn't know exactly what had happened prior. In the aftermath, you can go back and look at the timeline, and obviously there was a breach where that same individual Ray had whispered into a guy named Ryan Sam's ear. That was what preceded Ryan Samble then knocking over the bike rack into Officer Carroll's head where they testified at the January 6th hearing. And, lied, technically she lied at that hearing if you look at the actual video of the incident and the time of it. So all that happened prior. When I got there, there was, it's really hard for me to say, it wasn't like the most massive group of people I've ever seen, but let's just, for the sake of argument, say 1,000 people.
Sure.
And I don't even know at that time it was that much. But it's like I saw that there was something going on. Like always, I just go right up into it and try to get right between, whatever's going on. And there was a line of police right by the northwest side of the inauguration stage scaffolding that had been set up. And so that's where I initially set up and was running my live stream there. So I didn't know if you had any questions or if you keep going.
Yeah. I'm very intrigued by hearing it from your perspective because the only perspective that I've heard so far, other than just reading articles from people, is just how the news covered it. So hearing it from your direct perspective is an intriguing thing for myself, and I'm sure for the listeners as well. So go ahead and continue, and we will ask questions as we go.
Yeah, absolutely. So it seemed to me like that was where the line of demarcation was, based off of what I had seen coming up. It's like, okay, well, there's a police line, and then you have protesters. This is nothing new. Now, this is important in these entire COVID things, because for those that don't know, they have basically said there was a visible line around the Capitol, and anybody who went on those grounds was in violation of, I can't think of statute. But that's the way they framed it, was that anybody who went on there was in violation. So technically, according to that, everybody that was there was already on the ground. But I can speak from my experience that I didn't see any sort of, signs or anything else. Again, the Capitol was very unguarded this day.
Clearly.
And like I say, I told you we'd go out.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're already 20 minutes in, and we're still at the beginning of the day.
Exactly. So, so that's where I was, and it wasn't really hostile, right?
Okay.
At that point, obviously you had protesters that were there, to make their redress of grievance heard. And the police were there, obviously understaffed. And then there was a group of protesters started pushing up that west side stairway up to the upper west terrace of the Capitol.
Right. Okay.
And so I think a lot of people have seen a lot of that. Some of the more underseen things were the fact that, so I'm standing in that grass, right? And now I didn't see this with my own eyes at that time. So I need to clarify this, that I had my camera on my phone essentially pointed in that direction, but I was not looking at it with my own eyes. Okay? I'm looking elsewhere. And, you just keep your head about you in these situations. And in the video later, we see that a Capitol police officer shoved a man off of those stairs and fell, anywhere between, 20 to 40 feet.
Jeez.
Yeah. So a Capitol police officer shoved that guy off the stairs. He hit the ground right next to him. And I'm telling you, he was dead. I thought he was dead. I turned around and I'm like, he's not responsive, he's not moving, this guy's dead. And then everyone's screaming, they're saying they pushed him off the stairs, and then the crowd really got a little bit more heated. And then, of course, the officer that pushed him was flipping the crowd off after that.
Got it.
So, that was kind of a pretty important moment in the entire timeline of this that they've really not liked to report. As far as mainstream sources,
Sure. I don't remember anyone talking about that, but I may have read about it, but I don't remember that. Yeah, that's really interesting. And there's video of this?
Yes, there's video of this.
Okay, I'll have to find it. Interesting. Okay, continue.
So that happened, the crowd obviously gets more, heated, and I remember there was the cops didn't look like they were in a good situation either. The crowd was bigger than them, and they were not happy, and, if you look at it, you can come up with whatever excuses you want for what happened with the cops shoving the guy, but it didn't help the situation.
Sure, yeah.
And so then the tear gas started, and then, pepper balls, which is all very random into the crowd.
Right.
That's another thing a lot of people don't realize is that the police were just shooting, tear gas canisters and flashbang grenades off into the crowd with no declaration of a riot. Anybody who's ever covered a riot, that's a problem. You have to let people know that they're in some sort of violation of the lead before you just start shooting them.
Right,
But that
yeah.
didn't happen. And so, again, you're dealing with a lot of veterans and people who've led for this country, and they weren't happy about it. I don't know what else to say. And so, people are there with their wives, they're older, how are, I don't know how they expected people to react to this. It's my opinion, after, 2 years being in, that some point they do all this, and then the police just stand down. And someone was the other day in one of these other spaces we thought, there's a lot of discussion going on, but they essentially stood down, and then the protesters started moving up that west staircase onto the upper west terrace. So at that point, I was like, okay, this is what we're doing. This is what's going on. I guess I'm going with it. So you go up to the west stairs on that west terrace, and I go up to the top of the inauguration scaffold, the stair that went up to the top of that. And so I wanted to try to get a shot of the crowd looking back towards Washington Monument. And when I got to the top of the stairs, there was a female police officer up there, and I've always said she reminds me of Sergeant Callahan, the Lieutenant Callahan from the police academy. She had aviator sunglasses on, blonde, and she wasn't taking anybody's crap. And she ordered me. She said, "You get down." I said, "Yes, ma'am." And so that's what I did. Got down off the scaffolding, went back down the stairs, and back onto that upper west terrace. And so at that time, it was like everybody had been funneled towards the Senate entry. Okay, there was like a Senate door on that west side. And so that was where the initial breach of the building existed.
Okay.
And so this is kind of an interesting thing that's been dug up. But there was a gentleman there, or whatever we want to call him, but there's an unidentified individual there with a mask and a red hat. He takes a 2x4 and he breaks that window out right here. And then Dominic Mazzola, who's they're actually on trial right now. I think going through some stuff today. But he actually took a police riot shield test. He clears out that window. This occurred at approximately 2:13 p.m. And it was a watching that festival that was going on. It was a little bit further back by another door that goes into the Senate wing of the building.
Okay.
And so there's that initial breach. And again, I'm not seeing this with my eyes, but looking at video later, people started to enter into that window, and there was actually these two gentlemen that I've now been able to track back to another window right there at that entry, and they entered like maybe at 2:14. Okay, and they make a beeline directly through the building. They had to know where they were going.
Right.
Because then they came to the door that I was standing near, and they opened it from the inside. And so I don't see any of this. All I see is the doors open from the inside. Okay? A lot of this is analysis that's done after the fact. But they open the doors from the inside, the doors open, and so people start going in there. So that was where I made my initial entry into that. And so I went into that door. There was a female police officer who kind of came down a set of stairs there. It's right near the Senate parliamentarian. And she said, "Okay, well, you guys can't be in this area of the building. You need to go." And I said, "Oh, I'm a journalist." She said, "No, I understand." She said, "I understand." I said, "Oh, okay." And then another conversation came up, and he guided me out. And I remember just kind of joking and saying to him, I said, "Thanks for not kicking my ass." And then I went back out that door. But then by then, you had a lot of people that were then flowing into the building where the initial breach had occurred. And so I went ahead and followed along with them and right into there. And that led, as I headed south of the building, to the crypt area that sits directly below the Capitol Dome, the Rotunda. And so that's a room with a bunch of pillars and other things. And the police had essentially set up some form of a line in there. And so I remember standing, right in between, as always. And there was a lot of chanting and USA stuff and all that going on. There was an individual there back there, and he was being incredibly agitated. So he was cursing at police and really just, being extra, I guess we could say.
Sure. Right.
And so, I actually told him to shut up.
Any comments we want to add?
And then the crowd
About what?
behind at that point.
I'll leave that but you.
I kind of got knocked over. And I kind of figured and picking him up by his shirt and trying to get him to his feet. And then it just
Thank you for the
went
hot
down.
one. Of course.
So I get I would always stress that I'm not one of those who says that everything's peaceful or that everything's violent. It's bizarre. So this is more of that, where, okay, so you've got this situation, and then all of a sudden it's chill again, and the police are just like, cool, everything's easy.
Right. That is true.
So it's like, okay. Ended up going down another hallway.
What do you want?
This is one of another interesting point. You decided to
Yeah, go for it, dude. I already told you what you needed.
Then there was another hallway that then headed
Shit.
towards Washington Monument in that direction. And as
What's
I
up?
went down that hallway, there was another
So,
there, actually Lee Moe
here's what this says.
of
Okay.
New Yorker magazine. He was right
Alright,
there as
hold on
well.
one second.
And another
There we go.
Captain Gabriel Garcia is also wrapped up in all this and charged.
Okay, I had to save that information. Okay.
And so there was
So,
this
have you heard
president job.
about this
They
with
described
Tyre
it as
Nichols?
being
You
there
said you heard about that earlier today, right?
Vaguely, yes.
Okay, so apparently the footage was just released from the police body cam. Would you like to see it?
You want to show it?
Okay, let's react to it.
Because at that time I said, and again, this is something I didn't do. So I did plead guilty, and I always debated whether or not this crossed the line. I still debate whether or not it
Okay,
crossed the line.
Team Z.
But I did say to the policeman there, I said, look, now, it's like, I've thought about that statement for a long time.
Preparing the community would in some way help here. And the video coming in now, it is
Rocks.
What?
the anguish and outrage of
Let me use the restroom real quick and I'll be right back.
Off.
Also, I brought over some strawberries if you would like a treat.
Thank you.
I also have pineapple as well if you want pineapple.
Okay.
I think pineapple is pineapple one of the ones you like or don't like?
I like pineapple.
Okay.
Pineapple be one of my favorites.
Got it.
Oh, who lives in a pineapple under the sea? Who robs a bank? Easy to see. SpongeBob SquarePants. The world is crazy, as you can see. Got an axe which will bend this tree. The SpongeBob SquarePants. SpongeBob SquarePants. SpongeBob SquarePants. By an axe with the force of a tree. Home defense with a head axe.
Okay, so here's how we're gonna do it, okay?
Okay.
Whenever I let you know to pause, we will pause, and I will add clips as we go. So, for
Okay.
example, this clip from YouTube, let me download it real quick. We'll add it to the timeline, and then we'll record over it and add whatever music or whatever we want to do. So this is 7 minutes, and then once we're done with that, then we'll add things like the footage posted by this Twitch channel, for example.
Okay. Sounds good.
So it'll be either this footage here, or it'll be the footage of the protests.
Jeez.
What?
Just the protest.
Oh, yeah.
I'm ready. Just waiting on you, my dear.
Thank you, my love. It's now loading.
Okay.
It's 2%. Take a couple minutes.
Okay, we're good. I hear they're working on Subnautica 3.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
The new Unity engine.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
Unreal engine. I forget it's Unreal. I really like Subnautica 1 and 2. Do I want to play XCOM again? I sort of wind up an overpowered demigod. And by sort of, I mean a completely overpowered demigod. Stars, it's a new update.
What has a new update?
Stellaris.
Oh, okay. Okay. Let's see.
I like your pet.
Good boy. You want strawberry?
Yes, please.
Good big strawberry.
Oh,
That's
so big. I have to look at porn.
Of course you are. Would you move this and this out of the way, please?
That's cute.
Thank you.
Thank you for making popcorn.
Happy out, my dear.
It's very good.
I'm
What
glad you like
spices
it.
did you use?
I used a little bit of soy sauce, and I used some ube.
Oh. Oh, here's just what you need.
What? Oh my. Yes, please.
Oh my. Wow.
Oh my.
Oh wow.
Very cute.
Wow.
And now that you've helped me clear out some space, there's room for this. There you go.
Oh. People have joined the group. What channel is this?
Yeah, you only had 20 members before.
Jesus, where'd everyone come from?
Not really interested, my dear.
I see. Where do these people come from? That's my question.
Alright, let's do this and see. Your guess is as good as mine on that.
I think they're bots.
Oh, okay, whatever.
Hi, Chris. Hi, Brian. Goodbye. Shut the fuck with me there, kid.
Mm. Be a much bigger video file than I'm used to. I'm not sure why it's taking so long. Usually it only takes like a minute or two to finish. Whatever. Okay.
Jeez. I didn't realize that it was just a full group of African Americans.
That what is?
All the police officers plus the victim. They were all African American.
Oh.
Wow. Okay. For the released body cam footage. Wow. Oh boy. We're headed towards some interesting time.
Indeed we are.
Oh my.
Oh my.
What a dork.
That was cute.
Oh my god, that's so dorky.
I like it.
It's so dorky. What the? Oh, it's Beach Boy.
Oh my.
Oh. Dark. too dark. But still dark. Our friend is starting on my artwork.
Okay. How to, let's see, Firefox, download Twitch clip extension. Twitch clips downloader.
Let's see. We have HBO, don't we?
HBO Max?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We have HBO Max.
HB. Oh. Which one's mine? Do I have an icon?
It doesn't look like it. You can make one, or you can just use mine.
I'll just use yours.
Okay.
Shit, I can get South Park?
Mm-hmm.
Ooh. Season. I've seen season 5.
You've seen season 5?
Yeah.
Okay, Twitch database. Let's see. We provide the Twitch community with tools, insight, and analytics. Some of the tools on the site are intended for detecting bots that talk to users. Do not use them to harass or witch hunt. Okay. Patreon, money, contact. Okay. Let's see what options there are. Global emotes. All global emotes on Twitch. Global badges. Okay. Channels. See your Twitch channels, account info, sub badges, and more. Following list allows any user to see who someone is following. Okay. Roles lookup. VIPs. Dashboard. Okay.